Okay, let's talk about the estimate screen, which is central to the program. It's organized around customers. So on the lower left are customer names, which corresponds to names in the customer tab. So if I select customer B, then I go to estimates. I see customer B highlighted. And to the right of that grid is the estimate or estimates for that customer. So if I select a customer, on the left the projects or estimate projects for that customer appear on the right. And if I select an estimate project, on the top half of the screen are the individual line items for that estimate. Okay, so once I select an estimate, you see the line items above. Okay, let's say I want to create a new estimate. First thing I will do is select the customer. If I don't have a customer, I'll go to the customer and add it. But we added a John Smith previously. There's the John Smith. You notice there's no estimate to the right of it, so I'll click the plus button below the estimate project. Now I have an estimate, but there's nothing in it. So I can edit the names, describe the estimate. Okay, now I have an estimate, but it's an empty estimate with no estimate items in it. Okay, so if I want to add items, let's say I want to add parts or materials to that estimate, I've got it selected. I go to Parts and Materials tab, click the arrow on the labor and part items that I want to add to the estimate. You get confirmation on the lower right box. If I want to add labor tasks to the estimate, you notice on the lower left box that the current estimate is always shown on each screen. I'll click the right arrow again on that box, and those labor tasks are now in the estimate. Okay, now let's go back to the estimate screen. You see I've gotten some estimate items, but there are generally most of them. Anyway, there are no quantities, so I have to click edit, put in quantities. They put in the quantities, whatever is appropriate. Okay. Now I've got an estimate, a simple estimate to be sure, but I've got an estimate. Now you've got an estimate, but before you do anything else, you really should assign taxes and markup. Even if there is no markup, you need to assign a 0 markup rate. So you should have an item in the markup list that says 0, and same with taxes. Even though there are no taxes that you want to put in the estimate, you need to assign 0 taxes. But if you have multiple taxes, different counties or locales that you work in, you can have a markup or tax item for each one of those, and assign the appropriate one for a given estimate. Same with markups. You can have different markups for different customers, different estimates. There's more to markups and taxes than just that, but we'll cover that in the taxes and markup under preferences in another video. Notice whatever markup you put in here, when I go back to the estimate tab, it immediately appears in the price per and the totals. So if you want to show your customer the screen here, I would make sure you have the markup that you want assigned right away. And in fact, you cannot print an estimate until you've assigned markup and taxes. Now, if you want to print an estimate, you can preview it. Notice there's no logo. If I want to see a logo, you choose an image. You just do this once per template. And in the template are other things like the font sizes for just different sections of the estimate, the template you want to work with, paper size and orientation, where the logo appears on left or right, or signature where it appears on left or right, and the term. So all this is in each template, so you can have many templates, many as you want. You can, for example, call up different terms for different estimates, or you can rename the estimate to proposal if you want to use that word rather than estimate, and or make an invoice out of it. Just say invoice, and then the wording here and the terms would reflect the payment terms. You can say invoices just by selecting an invoice template. Pretty straightforward. Now I've got an template, and when you create, assuming you have a template, digital template image, ideally it should be a little bit larger than the space that's allocated in the screen here, because the program will scale it back to a smaller size to fit. But if you make it really tiny, it'll be a little bit fuzzy. Now this one's a little bit fuzzy because it's a small image, but if I go into any photo editor and scale it up to be bigger, then Estimate Master will scale it down and it'll look sharper. So keep that in mind when you put images in of your logo in the program. You can add a personal message, type in anything here, or paste something in from somewhere, and that appears in the estimate, like so. And if I want to assign an estimator, in other words, a person who's doing the estimate, I click on the estimate, go to My Company, pick an estimator name, click the arrow on the right. Now I've got an estimator. If I print it again, estimator name, you can sign this. Person wants to sign it before you print it, or you can do that. And then also the upper top of the screen are columns. These are the fields. You can choose different fields by clicking on different defined fields here. And there's two columns. One is for what you see on the screen, and one is what you see in the printout that you give to the customer. So you can have any number of fields. Some of them, like vendor, section, or location, will subtotal your estimate by that field. So let's say I'm choosing vendor. Now I've got vendor, and if I print it, I have to sort on the vendor. Then I print it. You can see it subtotals by the vendor. So if you want to partition your estimate by a vendor, you can do that. And vendor is just a field. You can rename the vendor. Any of these fields can be renamed from the defined fields, but you encode those into your materials and labor, and then whatever is encoded becomes a division for your estimate. So you do it correctly, a little bit carefully, you will have automatically, without any effort, really an automatic partitioning and subtotaling of the estimate by vendor, and you can rename that to a division or however you want to do it. You can also clone an estimate. Say if you have one estimate, you're going to make another estimate for another customer that's going to be more or less similar to that one. You just click on the estimate you want to clone, click the clone button, click the customer you want to assign the new estimate to, and then click done. Now you've got a cloned estimate. You can rename it, and then you can go and delete, add items, or edit quantities, whatever you want to for that particular estimate. You can also combine two or more estimates in a similar fashion by using the combine button here.